Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. Today we have Eric Stride from Huntress Security, who will be sharing his background in breaking into cybersecurity. But first, we want to hear about what really got him into cyber and how he got there. So, Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Hey, Christoph, thanks for having me. Like many that have been around this industry for a while, we probably didn't start right in cybersecurity. Same is true for me, right? When I came in, it was IT and cybersecurity was something you kind of found your way into. Similar for me, I spent actually 12 years active duty Air Force. I initially came in as a communications computer systems officer. First duty station was at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, running the network operations center there, and providing internet, web browser, telephone, TV, whatever off the base, all the services, core services and such. But I had actually came in with a top secret clearance, and so I got a cryptic email one day that said, "Hey, we have a unique position coming open based on your degree." My degree was computer science, and your security clearance. We think you might be a good fit. Let us know if you're interested. And I was like, "Hey, sir, interested? Details? Question mark." And I got a pretty cryptic response that said that had the cut and paste Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team mission, and they said, "But it's not exactly in the AF cert, so submit a resume if you're interested." And I said, "Wow, well, he gave me the computer network defense mission and said it's not that, so maybe it's a little bit of the opposite." Went ahead and submitted a resume, got accepted, and helped stand up one of the first offensive cyber units for the Air Force. Spent a few years there, got some phenomenal training, went up to NSA, to the National Security Agency. Spent 5 years at NSA, 3 years at NSA headquarters in a program called the Computer Network Operations Development Program, which is an ADEP Techie Geek. Was probably my best 3 years on active duty, to be honest, because I got to do exploit development. I got to do reverse engineering of Chinese malware, got to do some stealth capability development. And I finished it off with an operations tour, went through with the agency calls Riot, their remote interactive operator training, and got to do hands-on keyboard, very cool stuff for national security purposes. Of course, as an officer in the Air Force, they don't let you do the cool stuff for too long. So I PCS'd, which is a military way of saying I moved from NSA headquarters to NSA Georgia, where I took command of a small Air Force unit of offensive operators, and I was dual-hatted as the deputy chief of what was then called Tailored Access Operations, TAO, for NSA Georgia. So I had several hundred sailors, soldiers, airmen, Marines working for me, doing computer network exploitation for national security purposes. So phenomenal opportunity, both as an ADEP Techie Geek and as a leader. Really enjoyed my 5 years with NSA and my 12 years on active duty. When I left active duty, I went into the private sector. Simultaneously, I went into the reserve. I'm still an Air Force Reservist. Today, I'm 23 years in as an O6 in the Air Force Reserve. And in the private sector, I went and joined a cybersecurity company called Route 9B, which was made up of former NSA folks, and I ran the product development arm for them for about 4.5 years. And then I I joined an early stage company doing cybersecurity on super yachts. So that was a pretty good.
Before we get too far there, I
Yeah.
think for those that might not know all of the terms you just dropped there of the services that you did within the military branches and how specialized they were, unless you've really done either some watching of Snowden or some research into cyber. Those are some really highly specialized roles, and potentially a deep dive into what it takes to get really into the ones and zeros of a cyber network. But was that what you wanted to do, or was that what they made you do?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Unlike many in the military who kind of just get told where to go, I really only let them do that to me like one time out of my 23 years. And that was my first assignment to the base comm squadron at Nellis Air Force Base. After that, I really started doing selectively manned assignments, which put much more of the control in my hands, which is just kind of rare on the active duty side. Much more common in the reserve. You own your career, but on the
Mhm.
active duty side, you definitely get told like, here's where we need you, here's where you go. At the time, because cyber was such a specialized field that wasn't a core career field, it was some comm, it was some intel, it was more of a, hey, we're going to interview people and we're going to bring you in. Now, the program like at NSA, that CNADP program, that's still a very selective program. Folks that are in what we call cyber today for the Air Force, or even intel, or even developmental engineers have an opportunity to go into that. And so in order to succeed in that kind of environment, they're looking for people with a passion and an aptitude to succeed. And I think that kind of translates a bit to cybersecurity as a whole, because it is not a static career field. My mother-in-law is an accountant, a CPA. And while sure, some laws and stuff change from year to year and they have to get their CPEs to stay current, they're not completely overhauling how accounting works
Mhm.
every 2 to 3 years. And in cybersecurity, if you are not continuously learning, if you're not engaging directly and deliberately to be aware of what is the latest in tradecraft and techniques, you get left behind because
Mhm.
it evolves so rapidly. And so for me personally, it is effectively required a dedication to learning my entire life or my entire career in order to succeed in cyber. It's and it's little things even, right? It can be little things like listening to podcasts, right? I have, podcasts that I listen to every week. I'm not always the best about being up to date. Sometimes I'm about 2, 3 weeks behind until I get a flight. I can, get through about 8 or 9 of them on a flight, but it's those things help me stay abreast of what's going on in the community. It's from a passion perspective. Sometimes it's taking on individual products, excuse me, individual projects on my own just to get oriented with a capability, engaging in the open source community, downloading stuff, setting up a VM, trying it out, right? How does something work? I'm very much a hands-on learner. And so if I can actually put my hands on keyboard and do something, I'm going to absorb it better. And so I try to take this multifaceted approach of, hey, what can I do from a hands-on perspective? What can I learn and absorb? And then what are the training courses that hopefully I can get work to pay for, right? That I can go out and do in order to keep the skills up. Uh, and it's that combination, but just really that willingness to just continuously absorb information and be static that has been a critical piece for me. And it's one of the number one pieces of advice I try to provide people is always be learning. Try to find the niche that you have passion for too, right? You know this, Christoph. Like cybersecurity is so broad, but people are like, I want to do cybersecurity. I'm like, awesome. What do you want to do? Do you want to do, red team? Do you want to do blue team? Do you want to do, security development?
GRC, audit. There's so many non-hidden ones that people don't even think about that are in the background. Governance, disaster recovery. Like there's so many things that people don't even think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
I don't know if I completely answered your question. Go ahead with the next one, Christoph.
no, you did because you said you took control of your career. You didn't let the military say, "Oh, well, we're going to turn you into a cyber warrior." It sounds like you had a decision in your mind that this is what you wanted to do and you chose your post. So, now that you came out a cyber warrior and you're growing in your career, what are some of the deliberate steps that you took as you're going in and growing your career and you're coming out as an individual contributor and you're growing into a leader? What are some of those things that you did to transform yourself?
That's a good question. So tangential to that always be learning, certifications are a good opportunity to get a deeper knowledge into something. Big fan of experience, but I think certifications give you that kind of that launch platform to get those experiential opportunities, right? And so I have a handful of certifications, some I've let lapse, at least 3 that I keep current. But everything from CISSP, which as we talk about, is an inch deep and a mile wide. But from a manager perspective, it's a good broad certification. Hands on, right? Things like SANS GCIH is a good one from the incident handler perspective. The CEH one is a good, I will call it good familiarization with red team tools. It's a very tool kind of, here's the button, click. Okay, I have it. But I tend to like those that are a little more foundational, right?
Mhm.
OSCP is a great one. Unfortunately, I never sat for the 24-hour certification exam, but their coursework was phenomenal. And because it doesn't have the price point of SANS, it's one that I recommend frequently to folks who want to break in and get a better understanding of red team or even the defense side, right? Because understanding the offense is what you need to do to, be a
Mhm.
good defender. And the price point is reasonable that even if you're funding it yourself, you can make it happen, right? And so I like the OCP. So kind of going back to your question though, um, finding those opportunities where I can be very deliberate with the training and the experience and certifications was a good one. And frequently, right, from the hiring side, a certification says, okay, well, at least they've got a foundational level of knowledge for this role, right? And so I'm a fan of it from that perspective.
And then growing as a leader in your career, whether it was up or into a higher role at another organization, what were some of the things that you did to set yourself apart from the competition?
So I have a four competency mantra that I push to my leadership teams. I try to abide by it myself as well, and I won't claim authorship of it. I took the first three C's from General Mattis, right? But the first is competence, right? Don't just dabble in your craft; be an expert at it. Right? And from a manager's perspective, if you are really good at the job, you're going to manage the job better. You're going to better understand the pain points that your people are going through. And so from that perspective, I like to be, I call it micro informed, not to micromanage, but to understand the nuances that the teammates are going through, that the individual contributors are going through. And as a manager, that gives me much more insight and ability to advocate for the team. So competence, caring, right? Have a deep understanding of what does your team, from at the individual level, like what drives them, what motivates them. If you show them that you care about them and their development, right? They're going to perform that much better for you and for the organization. Conviction is the third C, which is, setting your standards and stick to them. And so set expectations and hold people accountable. Many people that I talk to that are frustrated in their roles, sometimes it comes down to they don't actually know what's expected of them because their manager doesn't have that deliberate conversation. And so having that conversation of, hey, here's what I expect from you. And that could be from a technical perspective. Here are the skill sets I expect you to have and to demonstrate, or here's the leadership qualities I expect you to have and demonstrate if you're in a leadership role. And then hold people accountable, tell them, be honest with them when they're succeeding and when they're not meeting the mark, because people need that feedback because none of us are perfect. All of us have room to improve and feedback is absolutely necessary. And so my number two in one of my military organizations, right? I had to have a tough conversation with him one time. And I was like, hey, we've been talking to the entire team about holding people accountable. This incident happened and you failed to meet expectations. Here's, your documented letter of counseling, not as a punitive thing, but as a, hey, you failed to meet the expectations here. I want you to know it so that you can do better next time. And his response was, yes, sir, this is completely deserved. And I understand it, right? It wasn't he didn't get defensive because I had established that expectation up front. Here's the conviction, right? The fourth C is communication. I am big on communicating. Sometimes I over communicate, right? But as the old adage says, right? Bad news doesn't get better with age, right? Communicate often, right? If there's a challenge, communicate it. If there's good news, communicate it, right? But I would rather receive too much communication than not enough. And so those four C's, almost regardless of the type of job you're doing, translate well for success.
I absolutely love that. I think you're right when it comes to the communication, the conviction, understanding what the stakeholders are going through so that you can either put yourself in their shoes or better understand how you can advocate for them as a manager or even step into their role as a backfill should push come to shove is definitely important. So in In an economy like this where everyone's looking to trim, cut, everything's going to AI, what are your thoughts on AI when it comes to both the pro and the con? Let me know.
Yeah, no. So we're in an evolutionary state, right? It's just another technical evolution. I think the folks who are like, AI is going to replace people, not exactly. Just like computers didn't replace people. Did jobs evolve and change? Did our efficiency and the way we do things change? Absolutely. It's effectively that kind of maturing and evolution that I think we're going to see. Jobs that used to take, manual work, multiple people days to do, right? We can do in minutes if we've leveraged AI smartly, right? And so from a security perspective, I'm looking at it, how do I make my analysts more effective and efficient? How do I slim down what it is that they need to look at? How do I pull out the already known bads so that it's just automatically handled? How do I pull out the known goods so that it's pulled away? How do I reduce the noise? When signals or alerts come in, how do I automatically enrich those? So that way, if the AI algorithm cannot determine with enough certainty for us to confidently take action automatically, and it ends up in the queue for a human analyst to look at, how do I make it so they can make that final determination faster? And then, oh, by the way, feed that back in so we can help train the algorithm to be better the next time through. And so really for me, it's like, how do we leverage AI smartly? The attackers are leveraging it, right? And so as defenders, we absolutely have. And so my overarching opinion on AI is that it will be another tool to enhance human effectiveness and efficiency. It's not going to replace humans, but it's going to change how we do our jobs. It's going to change that landscape a bit. It's going to create some new jobs, right? Nobody knew what a prompt engineer was years ago, right? But now we do, right? And so from that perspective, I'm not fearful. I'm actually very optimistic on how do we do it. At the same time, I'm not just wholeheartedly saying, oh, we're just going to automate that job. We're going to automate that job, because the way a lot of these AI agents work today, it's like putting an eager 14-year-old intern in that role, right? And so if you can scope it very precisely, you can get some pretty good output. But if you give it a very large scope, you get sometimes very questionable output. So
I,
be
I
deliberate.
was just going to talk through that. I think oftentimes folks think AI is some magic black box that you can take anything, throw it at it, and it will magically give you the expected output without you even understanding what sort of processing it was supposed to give to it, and expect that it would give you the right output on the outside. But like you said, you're going to need prompt engineers. You're going to need AI scientists to help tune the algorithms, the weights, the way that it does the analysis, and whether it's learning from your own AI models or refining from another AI model that you're not developing in-house yourself, because you don't need to always develop your own model. You can use someone else's model and then just use your own refinement on the output. From a security vendor perspective, um, how do you see client security posture when it comes to their maturity for implementing AI within their environment?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people have kind of jumped in without thinking through the security implications or ramifications, right? So in order for a lot of these models to be effective, right, you have to provide frankly, an elevated level of access, right? And so if you look at, how do you protect data from rogue insiders, you should take a similar approach to the AI models, but then you have to take a trade-off of like, does it need access to everything? And how do I audit that? And so what are the desired outcomes? I would also say, look at the things maybe it shouldn't have access to and deliberately restrict that. If it's, core financial data for your organization, does the AI model need it? Right. If it's a answer bot and support, absolutely not. Right. And so Now, maybe if it's your internal data team that's, looking to drive business projections, maybe they do, right? And so look at what your desired outcome is and scope down the exposure. Obviously, those that are publicly facing need to be scrutinized much heavier than your internal models, right? That's just, I mean, that's security 101, right? Start at what's exposed for, outside first, and then look at the internal. I would say don't ignore the internal though, right? Just like you have insider threats that you shouldn't ignore, don't ignore those AI models that are internal only, because you might be exposing yourself unnecessarily.
And what do you think of the major assistant models that folks might grant access to their entire calendars and their entire mailboxes just so that they can have an AI assistant?
Understand the risks, right? It's a risk reward trade-off, right? How mature is the agent? How mature is the organization, providing it to you, right? There's an old adage too, right? If it's a free product, then you are the product, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
think about where you're getting access to the AI model, and are you providing it additional training data, or are you at a paid subscription where they've agreed not to use any of your data for training? Most of the free models, right? That stuff ends up fed back in as additional training data. And so I think people need to recognize that when they're looking at bringing some of these models in, right? Who's the product?
Yep, yep. So I'm recording this just before I go to B-Sides Nova in the Northern Virginia area, and it's making me think about like how do security companies like yourself go out and recruit and develop their next generation of talent that might not be in the workforces yet, but you're hoping to encourage them and stimulate them, or they might be in the workforce, but they might be in a separate area of the workforce and you're looking to transition. How do you engage them to they have those skills and capabilities, but they maybe didn't think that this would be the right field for them? How do you encourage them to come on over?
Yeah, no. So a couple of points there. So one of Huntress's core tenets is elevating the industry. And so you'll see that we will take some of our interesting investigations and we'll put those out there as very detailed reports, either blogs or Tradecraft Tuesdays type sessions on our YouTube channels and such, just to elevate the entire security community. And I would say that that includes folks that are brand new and trying to break in. From a more kind of structured approach, we're at a pretty good inflection point now where historically we've hired a lot of, I'll say highly trained folks specifically into some of these roles. As we continue to grow and Huntress is growing like wildfire, I have tasked the team to make very deliberate development paths for folks with on ramps and off ramps at all levels. Right. And so entry level positions for me is an area that we as an industry have done a poor job of defining and refining and advertising. They advertise something like 300,000 open positions in cybersecurity, but if you talk to recent college grads, they can't find any of them. And the reason is a lot of them are at these more senior levels where they want you to already have an established skill set. And then you'll find an entry level position and they advertise that they need 3 to 5 years experience. And I'm like, hey, bro, that's not an entry level position, right? And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the older folks, myself included, right? When we came in, you didn't graduate from college with a cybersecurity degree. You came right in, you went into something else, IT, and then you developed some skills and you pivoted in. And so we need to, as an industry, create those on-ramps for the folks that are brand new. And so I've asked my team within my SOC, within my product support, my security operations center support teams, to very deliberately look at those entry level positions. And then how do we develop them up, right? How do we help folks achieve their long-term objectives? Maybe they want to be in the SOC, right? And grow through all the tiers. Awesome. Maybe they want to become a threat hunter. Awesome. What does that look like? What are the expectations at every level from an entry level, right? What we would call an associate to a staff level, a senior level, a principal level, right? What are the skill sets that they need to obtain and demonstrate in order to be successful? What's the training they need to have to be successful? And then, for some folks, they don't want to stay in the SOC, or maybe they don't want to do threat hunting. Maybe they decide that, you know what, hey, I developed some really good skills. I want to pivot off and go to sales and be a sales engineer because some people
Yeah.
really like that. And some people dig
Customer
the commission
success
structure.
manager.
Exactly. Right. And so I think as an industry, we have to be very deliberate about bringing in entry level folks that are no kidding entry level with a degree, with some basis of certifications,
Mhm.
maybe, and then creating a roadmap for them to be successful and a roadmap for them to grow to where they want to be. And so I've asked my team, and so for those folks who don't know, right, I've been at Huntress just shy of 2 months, right, brand new in their CSO role. And so I've been asked to come in and let's help the security team enable hyper growth. And for me, that's, a key piece of that is how do I bring in those entry level folks and make them effective and efficient and grow them to where they want to go. So my team has that charge from me on how do we create a high performing organization that enables folks at all levels to succeed.
Wow. Well, this has been a riveting conversation. I picked up some tidbits myself. Eric, really appreciate your time and your enthusiasm for developing folks at all levels. Really appreciate it. If you have links to some of those roles you have open, happy to share it in the final post. But thank you very much. And thanks for all of those who are listening for another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity.
Thanks for having me, Christoph. I appreciate it.